Humans have always felt a deep need to protect what is precious to them. For thousands of years, long before we had steel safes or digital bank accounts, the earth itself was our most trusted vault. When danger loomed, the tramp of marching armies, the threat of pirates on the horizon, or even just the simple fear of a jealous neighbor, people looked to the ground beneath their feet. They carefully wrapped their life's savings, often in the form of gleaming coins in cloth or leather. They placed them inside sturdy pottery jars or wooden boxes. Then, under the cover of darkness or in a hidden corner of a field, they would dig a hole and commit their future to the soil, hoping to one day return. This simple act of burying treasure is a story that repeats itself across every culture and every century. It is a profoundly human story, filled with hope, fear, and desperation. Each buried hoard is a time capsule, a frozen moment of crisis. The owner intended to come back. They believed the threat would pass, that life would return to normal, and that they would reclaim their wealth. But for so many, that day never came. War, disease, or a sudden untimely death meant the secret of the treasure's location was lost forever. The coins lay silent in the dark earth, waiting for centuries to be found, their owners long gone and forgotten. These buried riches are more than just forgotten money. They are our most direct and tangible connection to the lives of ordinary people from the past. History books tell us about kings, queens, and great battles, but a hoard of coins can tell us the story of a single family. It might be a Roman farmer, a Viking trader, or a medieval merchant. The coins show us what money they used, where it came from, and how much their life's savings were worth. Finding a hoard is like discovering a lost letter from history, one that speaks not of grand politics, but of personal hopes and fears whispered into the earth itself. The discovery of a coin hoard is always a moment of pure magic. It connects our world directly to another, long-vanished one. Suddenly, a quiet field in the English countryside or a construction site in a bustling city becomes a stage where an ancient drama is revealed. These discoveries remind us that the past is not a distant abstract thing. It is physically present, lying just inches beneath our modern world. Every clink of a coin pulled from the soil is an echo from a life once lived. A story that was almost lost to time, now brought back into the light, for all of us to share and understand. Our story begins in ancient Lydia, a powerful kingdom in what is now modern-day Turkey, around 2,700 years ago. It was here that humans first came up with a revolutionary idea, creating standardized pieces of metal for trade. These first coins were not perfectly round like ours today. They were small, bean-shaped lumps made of a natural gold and silver alloy called electrum. Each one was stamped with a simple design, like the head of a lion, which was the symbol of the Lydian kings. This stamp was a guarantee. It declared that the coin was a specific weight and value, making trade easier and more reliable than ever before. This incredible invention quickly spread across the ancient world. The vibrant city-states of Greece, with their far-reaching trade networks, embraced coinage with enthusiasm. Soon, cities like Athens, Corinth, and Aegina were minting their own beautiful silver coins. These coins were works of art, decorated with images of their patron gods and goddesses, like the famous Athenian owl. As coins became the lifeblood of commerce, they also became a new form of portable wealth. For the first time, a person's entire fortune could be held in a small bag or pot, making it both valuable and vulnerable. With this new form of wealth came a new problem: how to keep it safe. In a world with no banks and constant threats of war between rival city-states, people turned to the oldest security system of all, the Earth. Archaeologists have found numerous small hoards from this period, often buried beneath the floors of houses or hidden in the walls. These early hoards tell us a story of an uncertain world. They're usually small, containing just a handful of coins, perhaps the savings of a shopkeeper or a soldier, buried in a moment of panic and never recovered. These first coin hoards are incredibly important. They show us how quickly people adapted to this new technology of money. They also give us a glimpse into the everyday lives and anxieties of people in the ancient world. A pot of Athenian drachmas buried in Egypt tells a story of a Greek mercenary who served far from home. A collection of coins from different cities found together in Sicily reveals the complex web of trade that connected the Mediterranean. These silent witnesses, buried for millennia, allow us to trace the birth of our global economy and understand the fears of the very first people to carry their wealth in their pockets. The Roman Empire was a world built on coin. From the misty shores of Britain to the deserts of Syria, Roman currency was the engine of a vast interconnected economy. Legions were paid in silver denarii, taxes were collected in gold aurei, and merchants traded with bronze sestertii. But the empire was also a place of frequent turmoil. Civil wars, barbarian invasions, and political instability were constant threats. For Roman citizens, from wealthy senators to humble farmers, burying their savings became a common and often necessary precaution against the chaos that could erupt at any moment. Roman coin hoards are found across the entire expanse of the former empire, and they tell a powerful story of its rise and fall. Hoards from the stable periods of the early empire are often smaller and contain coins of high quality. But as the empire faced growing crises in the 3rd and 4th centuries AD, the hoards become larger and more frequent. People were burying not just their savings but their entire family fortunes, desperately hoping to protect them from collapsing authority and invading tribes. The sheer number of unrecovered hoards from this late period is a silent testament to the scale of the chaos and the collapse of Roman rule. Perhaps the most famous Roman treasure ever found is the Hoxne hoard, discovered in Suffolk, England, in 1992. A man using a metal detector to find a lost hammer stumbled upon a treasure that stunned the world. Buried in an oak chest were nearly 15,000 Roman coins of gold, silver, and bronze. Alongside them were exquisite silver tableware, gold jewelry, and other precious objects. The latest coins in the hoard dated to the early 5th century AD, a time when the Roman legions had just withdrawn from Britain, leaving the province vulnerable to invaders. The Hoxne hoard is a perfect snapshot of this terrifying moment in history. It likely belonged to a very wealthy Roman family who, facing the breakdown of law and order, gathered all their most valuable possessions and buried them for safekeeping. They clearly intended to return, but for some reason, they never could. The treasure lay undisturbed for over 1,500 years. It tells us not just about the wealth of a single family, but about the fear and uncertainty that gripped an entire province as its world fell apart. It is a poignant and spectacular reminder of the personal tragedies hidden within the grand narrative of collapsing empires. The period following the collapse of Rome is often called the Dark Ages, a time of great upheaval and migration. In this new world, a new power rose from the north, the Vikings. These Scandinavian seafarers were known as fierce raiders, but they were also skilled traders, explorers, and settlers. For them, wealth was measured in silver. It was not just coins, but also bracelets, neck rings, and chopped-up pieces of metal known as hacksilver. This silver was their status, their power, and their passport to trade across a vast network that stretched from Newfoundland to Central Asia. Viking hoards are found all along the routes they traveled, from the coast of England to the riverbanks of Russia. These hoards are different from the Roman ones that came before them. They often contain a fascinating mix of treasures. A single hoard might include Anglo-Saxon pennies, Arabic dirhams from Baghdad, Byzantine coins from Constantinople, and Frankish currency, all alongside beautifully crafted Viking silver jewelry. This mix tells a story of a globalized world connected by the Viking longship. It shows us that these were not just mindless pirates, but sophisticated merchants engaged in a complex international trade system. One of the largest and most famous Viking hoards is the Querdale hoard, discovered by workmen repairing a riverbank in Lancashire, England in 1840. They unearthed a lead chest weighing over 40 kilograms, filled with an astonishing collection of over 8,600 items. The vast majority was silver, coins, ingots, and hack silver from all corners of the known world. It is believed to have been buried around the year 905 AD, a time of intense conflict as Vikings fought for control of northern England. This was not the savings of a single farmer. This was a war chest, likely belonging to a Viking army on the move. Why was this immense treasure buried and never recovered? The exact story is lost to time, but we can imagine a dramatic scene. Perhaps the Viking leader who buried it was killed in a nearby battle. Perhaps the army was forced into a sudden retreat, unable to go back for its payroll. Whatever the reason, the Cordell hoard provides a stunning glimpse into the scale of Viking wealth and ambition. It is a material record of their power, a fortune gathered through both raiding and trading, buried in a moment of crisis and left to tell its incredible story to a future world. The medieval period was a time of castles, knights, and cathedrals, but it was also an era of constant uncertainty. Wars were frequent, from local disputes between feudal lords to grand conflicts like the 100 Years' War between England and France. Beyond the battlefield, life was fragile. Famine and disease were ever-present threats, and none was more terrifying than the Black Death, the devastating plague that swept across Europe in the 14th century. In such a world, burying one's wealth remained a sensible and common practice for people from all walks of life, from peasants to princes. Medieval hoards often reflect the specific turmoil of their time. Hoards found along the borders between warring kingdoms frequently contain coins from both sides, hinting at the shifting fortunes of war and the movement of armies. For example, numerous hoards of English and French coins have been found in the fields of northern France, silent witnesses to centuries of conflict. These hoards can help historians map the routes of armies, understand the economic impact of war, and even pinpoint the locations of forgotten skirmishes. The coins become tiny markers of great historical events, showing exactly where and when the drama unfolded. The church also played a significant role in the story of medieval hoarding. Monasteries and cathedrals were some of the wealthiest institutions in Europe, accumulating vast treasures through tithes and donations. During times of war or political instability, they too would hide their precious objects. Chronicles tell of monks bearing golden chalices, jeweled reliquaries, and chests of coins to protect them from looting armies or avaricious kings. While many of these treasures were later recovered, some were lost, leaving behind tantalizing legends of hidden monastic fortunes that continue to fascinate treasure hunters to this day. The terrifying arrival of the Black Death in the mid-1300s created a new and tragic reason for burying wealth. As the plague swept through communities, killing up to half the population, people would have buried their money in a desperate act of hope. They likely thought they could wait out the disease and retrieve their savings once it was safe. The sheer number of hoards dating to this precise period tells a heartbreaking story. They are the final act of people who did not survive, their unrecovered savings a somber memorial to the plague's devastating human cost, and a stark reminder of the fragility of life in the Middle Ages. The Age of Exploration, beginning in the late 15th century, dramatically changed the world's relationship with treasure. When Spanish conquistadors arrived in the Americas, they found empires, the Aztec and the Inca, with immense wealth in gold and silver. They plundered these riches on a scale never seen before, melting down priceless works of art into crude ingots and coins. This massive influx of precious metal from the mines of Peru and Mexico was destined for Spain, needed to fund its European wars and imperial ambitions. A new kind of hoard was born, the treasure fleet. These fleets were convoys of galleons, heavily armed but dangerously overloaded with treasure, making the perilous journey across the Atlantic. They faced many dangers. English and Dutch privateers like the famous Sir Francis Drake hunted them relentlessly. But the greatest threat of all was nature itself. The Caribbean was a breeding ground for violent hurricanes, which could scatter a fleet and send ships, men, and treasure to the bottom of the sea in minutes. The seabed along the Florida coast and throughout the Caribbean is littered with the wrecks of these Spanish galleons, creating vast, sunken hoards of unimaginable value. The most famous of these lost treasure fleets was the 1715 Plate Fleet, a convoy of 11 Spanish ships laden with the treasures of the New World, was caught in a powerful hurricane off the coast of Florida. Every single ship was lost, and over 1,000 people perished. The immense treasure, including millions of silver and gold coins, was scattered along the ocean floor. For centuries, this treasure lay just offshore, becoming a legend. It was only in the 1960s that modern treasure hunters began to systematically locate the wrecks and recover their glittering cargo, bringing the story of the 1715 fleet back to life. These maritime hoards are different from those buried on land. They were not hidden intentionally out of fear, but lost accidentally in a moment of catastrophic disaster. The coins recovered from these wrecks, such as the iconic silver piece of 8, are often beautifully preserved by their saltwater tomb. They tell a story of global empire, of colonial exploitation, and of the terrible risks of maritime travel in the age of sail. Each coin brought up from the depths is a direct link to this dramatic era of conquest, and a tangible piece of a story that shaped the fortunes of both the Old World and the New. As the world moved into the 18th and 19th centuries, it seemed that the age of burying treasure should have come to an end. This was the era of enlightenment and industrial revolution. Stable governments and, crucially, the rise of modern banking offered people a safe and reliable way to protect their money. Instead of hiding coins in a pot under the floorboards, a person could deposit them in a bank where they would be secure and even earn interest. For many people in the growing cities of Europe and America, this new system made the old ways of hoarding seem obsolete and unnecessary. However, the habit of burying wealth did not disappear entirely. It simply moved to the frontiers and the fringes of society. In the American West, for example, life was far from the stability of the East Coast cities. This was a land of gold rushes, cattle drives, and outlaw gangs. Banks were few and far between, and often untrustworthy. For a prospector who had just struck gold, or a rancher who had sold his herd for cash, burying the money was still the safest option. Legends of buried outlaw loot from Jesse James and his gang became a powerful part of American folklore, blurring the line between history and myth. One of the most incredible modern hoards ever found is the Saddle Ridge Hoard, discovered in California in 2013. A couple walking their dog on their property noticed the top of a rusty can sticking out of the ground. What they found inside was beyond their wildest dreams. A treasure trove of 1,427 gold coins dating from 1847 to 1894, with a face value of over $27,000. The coins were in pristine, uncirculated condition, suggesting they were put away as soon as they were minted. The total value of the hoard was estimated to be over $10 million. The story behind the Saddle Ridge Hoard remains a complete mystery. Who buried it, and why? The dates of the coins place the burial sometime in the late 19th century, a time when California was still a wild and rugged place. Perhaps it was the secret savings of a wealthy and distrustful individual who preferred the security of the earth to the uncertainty of a bank. The hoard is a stunning reminder that even in the age of modern finance, the ancient impulse to bury treasure remained strong. It shows that for some, the trust in a secret hole in the ground was greater than the trust in any human institution. The 20th century was defined by conflict on a scale never before seen in human history. Two devastating world wars, followed by the long, tense decades of the Cold War, brought turmoil and terror to millions across the globe. In these times of unprecedented crisis, the ancient practice of burying valuables saw a dramatic and tragic resurgence. As armies marched across Europe and governments collapsed, ordinary citizens once again turned to the earth as their last hope for protecting their savings, their family heirlooms, and their hope for a future that many would never live to see. During World War II, hoarding became a widespread survival tactic in occupied countries. Families facing persecution, displacement, or deportation would gather what they could: coins, jewelry, wedding rings, and bury it, often in their own gardens or cellars. They did this with the desperate hope that, if they survived, they would be able to return and use these resources to rebuild their lives. The countless small hoards discovered across Europe since 1945, particularly in places like Poland and Germany, are the heartbreaking physical evidence of these personal tragedies. Each one represents a family torn apart by war, a story of hope and loss. The story of hoarding was not just about personal survival, it was also about national treasure. As Nazi Germany swept across Europe, governments and national banks made frantic efforts to save their country's gold reserves. The gold from countries like Poland, Belgium, and the Netherlands was secretly shipped to safety in Britain, Canada, and the United States. This was a high-stakes race against time. The Nazis were notorious for plundering the wealth of the nations they conquered, and protecting these gold reserves was crucial for funding the war effort and ensuring the survival of governments in exile. Even after the wars ended, the fear lingered. The Cold War divided the world and brought the new terror of nuclear annihilation. In the United States during the 1950s and 60s, some people built fallout shelters in their backyards, stocking them not only with food and water, but also with cash and coins. They believed that in the event of a nuclear war, banks would collapse and paper money might become worthless, but gold and silver coins would always retain their value. This fallout shelter hoarding shows how, even in the most modern of centuries, deep-seated fears can drive us back to the most ancient and instinctive forms of financial security. For centuries, the discovery of a coin hoard was almost always a matter of pure luck. A farmer plowing a field, a laborer digging a foundation, or a child playing by a river might stumble upon a piece of history. While these chance discoveries still happen, the last 50 years have seen a revolution in the world of treasure hunting. The development of the portable, affordable metal detector has put the power to find the past into the hands of ordinary people. Enthusiasts and amateur archaeologists can now systematically search fields and forests, listening for the telltale signal that might indicate a lost coin or a buried hoard. This new technology has dramatically increased the number of discoveries. In countries like the United Kingdom, where metal detecting is a popular hobby, thousands of historical objects are found every year. This has led to the unearthing of incredible treasures that might otherwise have remained hidden forever, including major hoards from the Roman, Viking, and medieval periods. However, this technology also brings challenges. It raises complex questions about who owns the past and how it should be protected. Laws have had to adapt to this new reality, balancing the rights of landowners and finders with the public's interest in preserving our shared heritage. In the United Kingdom, this challenge has been addressed by the Portable Antiquities Scheme. This is a voluntary program that encourages finders to report their discoveries to a local archaeologist. The object is then recorded, photographed, and added to a public database. This process ensures that even if the object remains in private hands, its invaluable historical information is not lost. For finds that are legally defined as treasure, such as a hoard of gold or silver coins, a process is in place to ensure they can be acquired by a museum, with a reward paid to both the finder and the landowner. Looking to the future, technology will continue to transform our ability to uncover and understand the past. Ground-penetrating radar, satellite imagery, and LiDAR, light detection and ranging, can reveal the faint outlines of ancient settlements and earthworks, helping archaeologists target their searches more effectively. These tools allow us to see beneath the surface of the landscape without ever digging a hole. the story of buried riches is far from over. As our technology becomes more advanced, we will undoubtedly uncover new hoards and new stories, each one adding another fascinating chapter to the incredible saga of human history.